it's Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and this is part 2 of my interview with Thea Kelley, the author of Get That Job, the quick and complete guide to a winning interview. I'll have a link to that as well as part 1 in the show notes, which was about video interview myths that people believe are correct, but really aren't. Again, a link will be there in the show notes. This one is completely different. It's about interviewing for contract or temp assignments. Hope you find this helpful. Hope you give it a great review on YouTube. Leave a comment, share it, do something that lets people know it was worthwhile. And with that, let's just get going, okay? Which is a conversation about interviewing for contract assignments. Because in many respects, being a contractor has a different dynamic on an interview than for a full-time position. So let's talk about some of the differences between the two, okay?
Yeah, okay. One of the differences is it's a quicker process. The interview might be shorter or might not. The decision will almost certainly be made more quickly. So I don't think there's anything in particular you need to do about that, but just realize that it is going to be quicker. The other thing is that the salary and benefits are, I'm always harping to people that you don't bring up salary, don't try to negotiate until you've got an offer. But that's not true with contract roles. A lot of times salary and benefits are discussed and negotiated up front with the agency recruiter before they even want to send you to the client company for that interview. So you need to be ready for that.
Your pricing is part of the beginning process as opposed to the end process. See, on a full-time job interview, salary is discussed throughout the process. The screener is trying to evaluate you for price. The hiring manager is trying to confirm price. Everyone's trying to confirm price with you.
But you want to be cagey and not commit yourself.
Right. The idea is always deflect, deflect, deflect.
Yeah.
So when the screener says, so how much are you looking for? Because you live in a location where it's illegal to ask your current salary. You say, could you give me a sense of what the range is? And they say, but I asked you first. And the game becomes, I can give you a price now, but understand, I haven't met the hiring manager. I've just seen a job description, which may or may not be completely accurate. I don't know what the team is like, what the expectations are going to be, other than what I've read. Or if they called you up out of the blue and recruited you, other than the 3 lines of what you've told me and what the title would be.
Right,
So,
and this is a tricky thing, and one of the free gifts that we'll be talking about at the end of the interview is about that, helping you with that.
Oh, goody, free gift. I love free stuff.
Right.
So in contrast, in the contract assignment, when you're working through a contracting agency, rather than going direct, the price is negotiated before you walk in the door at their client.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you a nice, easy question here.
Yeah.
And why do they do that?
Because for one thing, they don't want to send you to the client if it's not going to work out cost-wise. And also it's because they've probably already talked about price with the client. Am I getting this right? What do you have to add to that?
Well, the fundamental is they know what the client's prepared to pay.
Yeah.
And they have to work a margin in for their costs. Oh, they're making money off of my back. Yeah, so what?
Right.
Because they still have to pay for electricity, phones, travel at times, for all the situations they work on that don't work out. Yes, you're paying for their overhead, you're paying for taxes, real estate, a whole bunch of other things, including the salesperson's benefits. So yes, it happens. So they discuss price to make sure that there's an adequate margin so that they can keep their lights on.
Right. But don't think you can't negotiate with the agency, because you can. They probably have some wiggle room there. So as with any negotiation, you want to first do some research, get a feel for what is likely, what the going rate is, and also base it on what you can bring to the role. So first check out things like ZipRecruiter and other job listings, maybe other agencies, talk to people who have either hired contractors or been one. And a tip with that is if you talk to someone else who's a contractor, rather than ask them how much were you making, the thing to ask is what do you think is the typical rate for this type of role that I'm talking about? So once you have that research behind you, then ask yourself, what have I got to bring to this that's special and that's going to make me more valuable than someone else? And then you go ahead and work it out with the recruiter.
You can always, folks, go onto LinkedIn, find a consultant who contracted there previously, get in touch with them, and especially if there's been a gap in their association with the client, you can say, hey, look, I'm up for an assignment at such and such. You were obviously there. I don't want to be rude here, but what kind of rate were you getting?
Yeah. Or what kind of rate would you expect this to go for? And they'll probably tell you the rate they were getting.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And once, when I did recruiting, I would never tell people this, but I'm a coach now, so I can say this kind of stuff. And once the client has accepted you, then you can go back to the agency and go, I've got 2 other offers right now, and I really like this assignment, but I need you to do a little bit better.
Yeah.
And what you're able to do is negotiate the price up. They cut their margin down a little bit because they don't want to go to their end client and go, I can't deliver her, can't deliver him. They want to close this and start making money.
Right. But as Jeff said, you want to show a reason why you're coming back to them. So either the reason is you've got some new offers elsewhere, or the reason is you learned something about the job and what they're looking for that makes the rate you originally discussed not as appropriate as it seemed at the time.
Because one thing that happens is time is the enemy of all deals. And since end clients invariably procrastinate and stall, and then suddenly go, okay, I'm ready to go, you probably have had an opportunity to look at other things and maybe in the loop with other assignments or full-time jobs for that matter. And thus, when you have the offer and they've procrastinated, it's so good to be able to turn around and say, I've got a couple of other things that they've made offers a little bit higher than yours. Really? But, and they're going to try and embarrass you, humiliate you, bully you, and you're a consultant. You don't have to take that crap.
They might not do all that. But yeah, be ready for it. It's just business. Don't take it personally. None of it's personal. It's just business.
I'm on the East Coast. You're on the West Coast. That's an East Coast behavior.
Okay. Yeah, we're mellower out here.
Much mellower.
Okay.
On the East Coast, it's a cage match.
Okay.
So they don't want to lose. So
yeah.
What haven't we covered yet about this?
The questions may be different that they're going to ask you from an interview for a permanent role. And the questions you're going to ask them are different. So let me see. Start with questions to ask. No, questions they're going to ask. I'll back up to that. So they're likely to ask, why do you want a contract role? Why take a temporary job? What are you hoping to gain from it? And what they want to know is that this contract fits into your career plan, that it's a good move for you, that it's not just something you're doing out of desperation. Because if you were just taking it out of desperation, you might disappear real soon when you find something better. So you might want to say something like, right now I'm really looking to polish my skills and gain additional experience. Or maybe if they're placing you in a company that's a real hotshot employer or that you're very interested in, you could say, I'm also really interested in getting experience at that company in particular. So then they think, aha, yeah, this person's really got motivations to want to take this role and do well in it. Another answer might be, if you're one of those people who just like to do contract roles as a lifestyle, then just say that. As you can see from my resume, I've been doing contract roles for a number of years. I really love the lifestyle. And this one especially looks good to me because blah, 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 whatever is intrinsically, basically interesting about it. Not that it's close to where you live or anything. So that's what to say when they say, why do you want a contract role? Now, another question they may ask that's kind of tricky is they might say, are you looking for a permanent role? And it would be nice at that point if you've already beforehand asked them, does this role have the potential of going permanent? Because then you'll know if there's no potential of going permanent, you can say, Well, no, right. What I'm looking for right now is, like I said, polish my skills, gain some additional experience.
I'm going to interrupt you at that point,
absolutely.
and then come back to it. And one of the things, folks, is if you're working through a contracting firm or a temp agency, they'll always tell you if there's a possibility of conversion.
Yeah.
Because they want to make sure that at the back end they can do a conversion fee, because that's the way the contracts are written by them, is with a conversion fee. So they're going to want to find that out from you up front. And thus, if the end client asks, open to coming on board if we ask you to come on board, now they're not committing to anything.
Right.
So the correct answer, no matter what they say or how they phrase it, is sure. And then you can figure it out later on. Often what happens is consultants get shocked at what a full-time salary is versus what their hourly rate is. For example, a person who's making $100 an hour gets shocked that the full-time salary for $100 an hour translates into $200,000 a year, but the full-time job is only going to pay $125.
Right. And the difference is that the full-time job, of course, has benefits, and that's why it may be worth taking it, even though the hourly isn't as good.
And it's a decision you can make later on.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then an even trickier part of that one is what will you do if you get an offer for a permanent role elsewhere? That's really tricky. So basically, the answer that they want to hear is no, I wouldn't take it. So you can say something like, I won't be looking. And you need to explain why you wouldn't take it. That's the hard part. So you might want to say something like, I am really interested in a good relationship with your company and learning everything I can from this role, and having a good reputation as somebody who completes what they start. And hopefully that will be a good explanation for why I know you're not going to take another role if it gets offered. Do you have any further tips on this, Jeff?
I'll just simply say, if you're listening to this as a podcast, as Thea was posing this question, I was laughing, because when companies ask questions like that, they want to make sure you're smart enough to lie to them. If you're so dumb that you'd say, I'm out of here, or the next full-time job,
you will not get the job.
But if you can say something with a straight face that translates into, oh, I have made a commitment to you. I will ride it through till the very end, even though you could dispose of me at your will and not let the door hit me in the rear on my way out. I will be committed to you. Like I said, you got to lie to them because they're setting it up for you to lie to them. We all know that if a better deal came along elsewhere, you're out of there.
Okay. Yeah. And like I said, ask yourself, if I were to commit to this job and be unwilling to leave no matter what, why would I be committing in that way? And that'll help you give a better explanation for why you're saying that you wouldn't leave. Okay. And then there are some other questions they're likely to ask, like, tell me about a time when you entered a new role or situation and got up to speed quickly. So have a good story ready about that. In working with clients on this story, I find that a lot of people, they don't say how quickly they got up to speed. They tell a little story, but there's no time frame in it. And this is really about a measurable thing. Getting up to speed quickly is a matter of weeks or months or days or whatever in that particular occupation. So always in your story, say something like, I started in this new situation. I studied up on my own. I talked to a lot of people in the workplace. And within 2 weeks or within a month, I was able to proficiently do XYZ. So go ahead and put a time frame in there that shows them how quickly you can get moving. Some other common questions, not to discuss them in great detail perhaps, but how would you maintain productivity if your supervisor was unavailable for a length of time? They like to know that a person in the contract role is not going to just sort of sit at their desk going, I can't do anything right now. I haven't been able to ask my supervisor a question. They want to know that you're going to be resourceful. What's your experience working with teams or working independently? Maybe something about getting along with your supervisor, like tell me about a time when you disagreed with your supervisor or had a difficult relationship with them, which actually could be a bit of a minefield, huh?
Yeah, and one of my favorite scenarios, especially when put to a consultant, is tell me about a time you were in a situation where you got conflicting instructions from two different people.
Yeah, that's bound to happen to contractors all the time.
Right, because there's the immediate manager, there's the end user. Sometimes they disagree with one another.
Mhm.
How do you navigate that?
And at the risk of being too obvious here, it has to be a story with a happy ending. It has to be a story that shows you skillfully dealing with that situation, because they're not primarily concerned about whether you've been in that situation. They want to know how you handled it.
Right, and that everyone lived happily ever after at the end of the
Right,
story.
right. Okay. The questions that you need to ask are a little different from in a permanent role. And in addition to, you might want to ask them what the benefits, whether there's any possibility of benefits, how that works, why the role is open, what's the end date of it. Is it temp to hire? Though they, as Jeff says, they probably will have told you that already. Will you be employed by the agency or the client company? It's good to know. And here's a couple good questions that actually are kind of advanced. One is, how many clients do you have in this industry? So that gives you a sense. If they say they have lots of clients in that industry, then there's maybe a good chance that even after this role, they'll be able to place you in other roles. And so this might be a really good agency relationship for you. And then another question you could ask is, what percentage of consultants who you place, do you then go on to place them in another role afterwards and a third role after that? Because ideally, unless you're planning to have a permanent job real soon, you'd like to be with an agency that's going to keep you busy.
Agreed. And on the East Coast, where the recruiters might be relatively inexperienced, look for them to signal in their manner and body language whether they're being truthful with you.
Yeah.
On the West Coast, it might be a little bit different, but I came out of the New York area where not everyone was particularly honest
Yeah.
about stuff.
Yeah,
It
and you
was
could ask follow-up questions. That's what interviewers will do to see if you're lying. They'll ask for more detail. So if they say, oh, yeah, I've placed lots of people in second and third roles. And then you might say, oh, yeah, can you give me an example of somebody with whom you did that recently? And if they're having trouble coming up with an example, then that's kind of a clue, Or if they say, yeah, we work with lots of people in this, lots of companies in this industry. Oh, yeah, what are some of them?
right.
And ask that
Right.
with a smile. You want to, keep a friendly, collaborative vibe with them, but go ahead and ask questions.
That's right. And always observe,
Like
notice
body language.
the body language, the
Yeah.
tone of voice. And again, I'm going to give the East Coast nervous version, which is, well, and I'm rubbing my palms like
Yeah.
Macbeth doing out damn spot. And, they just, the tone, it sounds really anxious. And that's telling you something.
Yeah.
So, what followed the beginning of that anxiety attack, what's going to follow it is probably, shall we say, BS.
Yeah.
So,
And our last little thing here is, I said questions, we're talking about questions you ask with the agency recruiter. Then when you go to the client company, some good questions to ask are, again, confirm why the role is open, what the end date of it is, even if the recruiter's already told you, just to make sure that you're clear on those very important details. And when I say, by the way, asking why the role is open, that can be useful. Like if somebody says it's open because somebody's on maternity leave, then you figure they probably are coming back. If the role is open because somebody quit and left the job, there's maybe a little more chance of it going permanent. If somebody says it's open because the person got promoted, then that's good to know, what they moved on to. It tells you something about how people move up in that company. So, other good questions to ask are, what's the most important part of this job? And in fact, I like to suggest that people ask this at the very beginning of the interview, that you say, before we get started, do you mind if I ask you a quick question? And then they say yes, and you say, of course, I've read the job posting, but I'd like to know just straight from you, what do you think is the most crucial part of this job? What does the person coming to this job really have to be able to do well? Because whatever answer they give you, you now know what their hot button issue is. You know now what their priority is. And throughout the rest of the interview, you want to kind of keep that in mind and find ways to refer to it. Like if they say the main thing we need coming into this role is somebody who can get results with everybody and get along with everybody. Now you know that there's probably some difficult people there. So throughout the interview, you want to emphasize your ability to get results, even with people who maybe don't get back to you with information you need, that you're persistent and so on.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thea, this is fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. You got more? We got one
just
more?
A couple more. Just a couple more questions to ask the client company. What's a typical day like? Who will I be working with? What should I know in order to collaborate effectively with you and with the team? Will I need to use my own laptop or phone? And here's a real good one. What's the difference between a contractor doing a good job in this role versus doing a great job in this role? Because then when they tell you what a great job would look like, you can convey to them that that's how you plan to do things. Okay, that's our tips for today.
Excellent. And Thea, how can people find out more about you, the gift, and much more?
Yeah, you can go to greatjobsooner.com. And there you can read my blog. You can also click the Contact Thea button and schedule a free consultation to discuss your needs. But if you subscribe to the Great Job Sooner blog, you get some free gifts, which include, there's 5 of them, and it includes the first chapter of my book, which is all about how to stand out from the competition by understanding what your key selling points are. You also get an infographic guide to answering the salary expectations question, and you get a negotiation template to help guide you through a negotiation meeting, and a couple other things too. So it's a no-brainer. Subscribe. I don't share your email address with anybody else, and you can unsubscribe anytime you like.
Excellent. Thea, thank you. And folks, we'll be back soon with more. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. Visit my website, thebiggamehunter.us. I've got a ton in the blog that you can watch, listen to, or read that'll help you with your job search, with hiring more effectively, management, leadership, dealing with different workplace issues. And if this isn't your time that you want to do that, just put the address in your phone. Again, that's thebiggamehunter.us. And in the notes field, put something like Job Search Blog so you can find it there on a later occasion. Also, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/The Big Game Hunter. And by the way, at my site, you can schedule time for coaching, schedule time for a discovery call, find out about my books and courses. I got a ton there that's going to help you. And I hope you have a terrific day. And you know what? Be great. Take care.